They are their god's purest will made manifest, transformed for their dedication. Who or what they are now is so far beyond us we cannot help but be awestruck by their unyielding purpose. And perhaps, looking at the humans they once were, marvel at their once insignificance. They are an aspiration for all who venerate the dark gods. What do you need to serve the dark gods? Do you need to be able to speak? No. Do you need to be able to see? No. Do you need to be an 8-foot super soldier from 10,000 years ago? Also, no. Because when it comes down to the come down, all you need is a can-do attitude and an unceasing enthusiasm for whatever hobby your chosen god likes to do. Which in Khorne's case is murder. And if you're interested in some strong newcomers to this enterprise, I could introduce you to Rel and Kadra. When it comes to worshippers of the dark gods and chaos overall, it's the Astartes that get all the big press. Make the big showings. But let us not forget about those numerous mortal followers of chaos who got sold on the ruinous powers. Those everyday threats that the Imperium, through the Inquisition, work with unyielding anger to stamp out. And every so often, this paranoia is validated when a pair of disadvantaged and disabled nobodies from opposite ends of the Imperium gain the attention of a god. I'll walk you through those inauspicious beginnings in Rel and Kadra's genocidal adventure. We'll start with Kadra's beginnings on the Astartes strike cruiser named Apocalypton, which, with a subtle name like that, could only belong to a subtle chapter like the Black Templars. Now, being born with 2 X chromosomes meant Kadra was genetically forbidden from joining the Astartes. However, she could be a chapter serf. More specifically, a scribe. A role she was hand-picked for when she was sold off via Imperium tithe from her home planet. Because Kadra had a very special trait. She was blind. In spite of what the name may imply, scribes do a lot more fetching than writing. Getting records, purity seals, sensitive information about the chapter, you get the picture. And what's a better way to keep a serf from peeking at Astartes information than a serf that can't peek at anything ever? Besides, the guard can't use a soldier that can't see. Better to have her carrying these mammoth hardcover books so the Astartes can save their strength for real issues. And being the Black Templars, you can't just do your job for them, there also has to be a bit of proselytizing and chastising in between. A lot of, hey, remember, the Emperor hates you because you're an imperfect person carrying out his perfect design. Hey, have you prayed today? I know you haven't, and even if you did, I know you did it wrong, so do it again, right now. Or in Kadra's specific case, hey, you know you deserve to be blind because you sinned, or you would have sinned, so the Emperor took away your sight. You know, the kind of talk that's really gonna foster goodwill in your disabled serf. But who's gonna pay any mind to Kadra when you're an Astartes? She's like 5'3", usually got her hair in a disheveled brown bun. A perfectly average and forgettable young woman, with her only slightly unique feature being, in proof that the Emperor really does have a sense of poetic irony, rather big eyes, which you could describe as expressive if they weren't shadowy white orbs. Back on topic, Kadra is forced along as the Apocalypton is deployed to Paramem, a miserable rainy world with nothing going for it that was made even worse when it got itself caught up in Abaddon's Third Black Crusade. So you know the drill, lots of heretic Astartes on one side, a lot of loyalist Astartes on the other, and lots of reinforcements needed on both sides once everyone's done killing everyone else. Which is where the Apocalypton enters the fight, though it would never get to make planetfall as it ran into bad luck so rotten you'd think it was unholy intervention. The strike cruiser comes out of warp within spitting distance of a World Eater's ship. which in the great vastness of space meant that these two could actually see each other with the naked eye. Bad goes to worse when Angron's merry men notice the Loyalists first, abandon whatever they're supposed to be doing, and pull full flank speed for the Imperial ship. The Black Templars notice too late, the heretics are already sending over boarding parties, so prepare for close combat. With the World Eaters. I'll give the Black Templars this, however, they're no slouch when it comes to kicking ass. They are able to give as good as they get, and for every Templar that goes down, they're able to take one World Eater in return. However, the guys who spend their entire existence literally itching for melee combat are just a bit better. So when the battle is over, the Black Templars are dead, and all the World Eaters are dead, except one. The one who would be most likely to survive the carnage, the champion of the World Eaters' little warband, who in this case was a master of executions. Who, now that all the other Space Marines are dead, and all the Voidsmen at arms are dead, now he is left unopposed on the strike cruiser, so he decides to make a day of it. Meanwhile, all the surviving chapter serfs and support staff left alive, who are lucky if they can get their hands on a functioning lasgun, are just a little worried about this. For Kadra's part, she had hidden herself away, until a large group of other serfs found her and decided to take Kadra with them. Nice, right? Taking the disabled young woman along to keep her safe? No, as a matter of fact, it was just the opposite. This group was trying to get to the shuttle bay so that they could get the hell out of Dodge. But if they run into the Master of Executions, who's still strolling around the ship, meet him in a dark passage or at a blind corner, that's it for everyone. So one person needs to scout ahead to make sure it's safe for everyone else. And who's going to do that? Volunteer, draw straws, or make the blind woman do it? Because she's already dead, no way she's living through this. Might as well make her death do some good. For us. Of course, when Kadra catches on to this, she is furious. Takes a swing at one of her captors, but of course misses. To keep her in line, one of them gives her a shot in the stomach. Then it's off to find a way off the ship. It's not long before they find the Master of Executions. Kadra avoids getting the axe as the World Eater cleaves through a man and a woman with one glorious swing before the rest get away. Kadra attempts to escape her captors in the confusion until one of them snags her by the wrist. Can't let their canary escape the coal mine just yet. In response, they bind Kadra's ankles together so she can only walk in tiny baby steps. To which Kadra calls them some names which are, shall we say, rather colorful. And they continue. So, through the corridors and past the door to the shuttle bay we go. Kadra's ahead, she's boiling mad until the World Eater's champion finds them again. The second time, everyone's able to make it out alive. But then he finds them a third time, and a fourth time, a fifth time, practically as soon as they just lost him. Through it all, Kadra survives. And this is when everyone starts to catch on to something. The Khornate Astarte is finding them with increasing frequency, and the one person who should be the easiest kill never seems to be in any danger. They don't put their finger exactly on it, but what's happening is that Kadra's anger is swelling so much that it's attracting the World Eater like blood in the water. He's feeling that anger in her and saying, "Oh, that's good stuff." But the members of her group can't have that. Too bad, so sad, they have to kill their canary. So one guy goes up behind her with a sharp piece of metal ready to put her out of their misery. But Kadra isn't gonna die so easy. She can hear his feet scraping on the floor behind her, even smell them since these guys are so filthy from running around the ship. And when he's close enough, Kadra throws herself backward, knocking him off his feet. She gets him on the floor and just starts wailing on him. The rest of the group move in to stop her, but at this point Kadra's gone feral. Kicking, punching, scratching, biting, even drawing blood, she's got a point to make. Still, there are like 10 of them and one of her, so they're able to pin her down, ready to kill her. Luckily, a hero in crimson and copper would arrive to save the day. Very convenient. Or a bit less convenient, since the Master of Executions was still tracking Kadra's rage stink, saw the fight as it was just beginning, and no self-respecting World Eater would ever interrupt an honest fight. It's only when things seem to be cooling down that he wades in to pour gas on the fire. He enters from stage right to screaming, cut off by the meaty thud of that massive axe. Gore starts spraying everywhere like when you put your thumb over the end of a garden hose. With it, there's that unmistakable, almost metallic stench of blood, and Kadra's just lying on the floor, almost giggling. She knows she's gonna die, that's a given, but the idea that these people who caused her so much grief, the other serfs and the Black Templars before them, are now getting murdered by a greater power proves that there is at least some poetic justice in the universe. And if she can be the last one to die, that'll just be the cherry on top. Unfortunately, Kadra can still hear one more guy whimpering by the time the World Eater grabs her. So, shit, she had her fun, and now it's over. Only, the World Eater doesn't kill her. He yanks Kadra up to her feet by her arm, walks her over so she's standing in front of the last serf who he's got skewered to the wall, puts a utility axe which he took from one of the dead men into Kadra's hand, and doesn't say a word. He trusts Kadra to know what to do next, and Kadra does know what to do next. The serf's pleas are savored as Kadra wound up the axe like a baseball bat and buried the head deep into his gut. It's so deep she had to pry it free before she can wind up and hit him again. And again, and again, and again, and again, and again. Regular Butcher Pete, chop, chop, chopping that meat. Until the head of the axe is clanging against the metal wall because she's cut all the way through him. And the World Eater has to take the axe from her mid-wind-up. Now, it's never described, and Kadra couldn't see it anyway, but I like to imagine the Master of Executions had a big self-satisfied smirk. He'd found a good one, a good catch, one that you most definitely do not throw back. So that's exactly what he didn't do. When the Master of Executions makes it back to the World Eater's ship, he takes Kadra with him, basically holds her up by the arm saying, "Hey, I got a new one for the Jackals right here." And that's how Kadra joined the Khorne cultists. Once she had been canonized, of course, taking a black eye and a bloody nose in her initiation, though she did almost manage to gouge out a woman's eye with her thumb. So, powerful first impressions. Now that we've learned how Kadra got started at Blood God Enterprises, let's jump 50 or 60,000 light years to the other side of the Imperium, and see how Rel got his first interview with Khorne. In a system known as Thuris, on a planet slightly smaller than Pluto, lived a little human colony. A colony named, and brace yourself for this, Thuros Mining Colony 2LM-4. This place was as backwater gets. They weren't even a stable settlement. They had to rely on the support of the local civilized world. It was there that had all the major infrastructure, like, say, for example, proper hospitals. So the standard of living on TMC-4 wasn't even average. Add to this the mineral dust in the atmosphere so thick it could be seen as a light fog, and birth abnormalities were not so abnormal. To the point, if the Sororitas ever did an investigation on this place, they'd have probably executed at least 1/10 of the population as mutants. And our man Rel had fallen victim to one of these minor defects as he was a mute. The verbal center of his brain didn't work. About the closest thing he could get to speech was an oscillating groan, which he almost never did because it only added to the local mythos that he was stupid. As a matter of fact, because Rel was a little over 2 meters tall, with gaunt cheeks and long face that made him appear a little unsightly, people used to make fun of him, saying that he was actually a stunted ogrin. But at least they had the decency to make these jokes behind his back. It was a truly glorious life, working beside mining servitors on a planetoid so underdeveloped they had to rely on a real settlement for everything, including the local astropathic relay, which they would need to contact the wider Imperium. Now, when you have a colony too emaciated to defend itself, and has to fly to a completely different planet to call for help, put these two ingredients in a bowl and mix, what do you get? That's right, Drukhari bait! When the two planets' orbits placed them on opposite sides of the sun, the Drukhari swung in to take prisoners and do what they do. The only people who weren't captured on the spot were those workers deep enough in the mines to hide. Rel wasn't one of those people. Him and the other 90% of the population. A very good haul for the Drukhari, all said and done, and they divided up the take. The Cabal got their slaves, the Covens got their test subjects, and our man Rel was claimed by the witch cults for a little gladiatorial match. Now, I use the term match in the loosest possible sense. What would happen was that a Drukhari witch with her choice of weapons entered from one side, a human slave with a sword so dull it couldn't even cut through air was pushed in on the other, and they fought. Basically, the witch got a chance to show off how high she could build her combo meter on this living practice dummy, as all her witch sisters watched, and the slaves could watch too from their little holding pen on the edge of the arena. Most of them didn't watch. The Drukhari tend to work in a pretty messy fashion. Instead, they wept, they prayed to the Emperor for salvation, they tried to escape and failed, or they were Rel, who stared at every match with what I can only describe as psychopath eyes. Then, as the roster reached its end and the Drukhari started moving through the list for a second time, Rel made the unprecedented move of volunteering to go next. The Drukhari don't think anything of it. This Monkai wants to die, who are they to stop him? Rel moved in and started holding the given sword by the blade. Again, the Drukhari are tickled. Stupid Monkai doesn't even know how to hold a sword. That is, until the fight begins and Rel starts smacking his opponent with the handle. Turns out the thing wasn't much use as a sword, but it could make a decent morning star. It's still not a flawless victory. As a matter of fact, Rel is sliced up more times than paper when it's being shredded. But he made sure to volunteer for the witch he noticed had a light injury to her left leg. So he gradually gets one over on her, and with the able assistance of a jutting paving stone, is able to crack open her skull like a ceramic bowl. And the rest of the witches saw his skill and as a reward let him go. Hell no, this is the Drukhari we're talking about. Rel's reward for winning against one witch was to have 8 more fight him at the same time, eager to avenge their sister. So, Rel's f***ed, but he knew that already. All he ever wanted to do was take one of them with him, and he did. So now it's time to die. Until an unfriendly ally stepped in. You'll remember, or not, that all Drukhari are distant servants of Slaanesh. They make offerings to keep from getting devoured. And like Tzeentch is the sworn enemy of Nurgle, the sworn enemy of Slaanesh is Khorne. So the realm of Khorne is distantly aware of this spectacle, watching it out of the corner of their collective eye. Blood being spilled is always of interest, although it's being spilled for the wrong god, until this human steps in and turns the tables. And the guys are like, didn't see that coming, that's martial prowess, we like that. And killing the subcontractor of our rival, we like that too. I'd like to see more what this little guy can do. And a little voice appeared in Rel's head, speaking a language he'd never heard but can somehow understand. All it says is, kill them. Now, it might be implied that this was Khorne, but it really couldn't be the big man. If a Chaos God was to ever speak directly to a plain Jane mortal, they'd be killed in about 15 different ways, depending on what god was trying to speak to them. More likely it was a bloodthirster, a demon prince, something along those lines. But the effect of having this warp entity speak to him is just the same as Rel blacked out with rage. When he came to several moments later, he was fleeing the arena coated in blood. Most of it was purple, a decent amount of it was red, and the term coated in blood might be an understatement. The guy looked like he'd just emerged from a tar pit. He had to clean off his face with a hose to keep from suffocating. Still, Rel was free of the arena. Not free of all the witches, or the Cabalites, or the creations of the homunculi. As a matter of fact, he was pretty far from out of the woods. Worse still, the rageful influence that had nestled into his skull with all the subtlety of a pickaxe was gone but not forgotten. No more all-powerful Drukhari, and human, slaying rage. Now all Rel got was a constant low-grade headache brought about by an image in his head. Now, Rel, not knowing anything about the ruinous powers at this point, didn't understand what it meant. But us enlightened savages? Yeah, we know whose symbol that is. Under the cover of the mineral fog, Rel was able to elude the Drukhari and make it into the mines. But there's no eluding that symbol. It was so insistent that it demanded to be drawn, or better still, carved into the stony wall of the mine. Which is exactly what Rel did with a mining laser. Then he moved on for a bit, but in retrospect wasn't sure he'd gotten it exactly right. So he carved it out for a second time. Moved on, wasn't convinced, carved it a third time. Keep moving, still not convinced, a fourth time. On and on he continued his art show until around his seventh attempt he ran across some fellow humans who'd been hiding in the mine. Or maybe more appropriate to say they ran into him, drawn by the sound of chisel against rock from Rel's latest masterpiece. But everyone's a critic, as the people are so put off by Rel's totally sane etchings that one of them tries to hit him over the back of the head with a shovel. I tell you, this place just goes from bad to worse. First the people mock him, then they try to kill him. Still, at least he was able to finish the image before the group drove him off. And it's at this interruption by other humans that Rel has a temporary break from his mania. He takes stock and realizes he's in a familiar part of the mine. Starts to suspect he's just gone in one big circle. So Rel sketches out a crude map with the approximate locations of the 7 symbols he's drawn thus far, and sure enough, it's one big octagon around the central chamber, with only one point missing. And as soon as Rel realizes this, with his free will returning, he immediately books it for the point to draw the last symbol. 'Cause, damn this place. Only ass left alive, might as well wipe it clean. Rel doesn't know exactly what'll happen after the last symbol is carved, but he can infer. Probably a lot of chaos, blood, and death. And on all points he is completely correct. The last icon is drawn and a warp portal is opened in the mine. Not a massive one, but substantial enough to let in a healthy insurgency of bloodletters, flesh hounds, a few blood crushers, maybe even a herald or two. They sweep through, killing all the humans, killing all the Drukhari, and almost killing Rel too. But the Khorne stamp in his head gave him a little demon IFF. And besides, the big guy was more than willing to pick up a mining saw and join in the fun. So, kindred spirits. A heretic warship swings by, drawn by the sounds of demonic incursion. Rel signs on with their local contingent of cultists, and you know the rest. Jackals, canonized by jackals, Rel gets his nose broken before breaking some guy's hand in a doorway, and he's part of the Special K crew. Finally, Rel and Kadra are in with the Blood God, starting off as entry-level murderers, rising through the ranks to become champions of their respective cultist warbands. It was just that easy, right? No. In order to get to the end bit, I'm skipping over the early and middle bit where these two had to avoid being killed almost daily. Now, in itself, this is nothing special for cultists. Nurgle followers try to get you sick, Tzeentch disciples play mind games with everyone, Slaanesh cultists do things that are better left undescribed, and jackals try to kill everyone, including each other. It's their training regiment, and how they make sure beyond any doubt they're following the right leader. Everyone has to deal with a spontaneous knife fight on their way to lunch. However, Rel and Kadra were especially targeted for being who they are. Being such a tall man with no allies on account of no speaking, Rel was an obvious target for anyone looking for an easy reputation boost. Everyone wanted to be known as the guy who took down the big guy. And Kadra was just the inverse. The blind girl? Well, that's an easy target for anyone looking to pad their kill count. It was sink or swim for both of them, and by the last sane brain cell in Angron's head, they were going to learn how to butterfly stroke. Rel took a while to make a strategy that got results. The problem was that he had to get over himself and start playing up the archetype of the groaning simpleton. Then people didn't think fighting him would be so hard. So they get him in a one-on-one, Rel plays the idiot long enough to get his opponent's measure, then he would disembowel them with his bare hands, metaphorically speaking. Meanwhile, Kadra's strategy was much more simple. Without her sight, she developed alternative ways of detecting people. Listening, sure, a little, but smell turned out to be much more reliable. After all, these are Khorne devotees constantly soaking in blood and promethium. Keep her nose open for the next fight, and when someone started to come at her, Kadra struck first and started stabbing them. Or didn't even wait for them to get close and just threw a knife in that direction. A skill that she would become very good at through practice. Unfortunately, she didn't have much hope of recovering the thrown knives, so took to carrying around about 50. Also meant that she had a bit of a bad habit of killing the messenger, but that was their own fault for not speaking up. You announce yourself when you approach the blind. Now with Rel at the top of his crew and Kadra at the top of her crew, it was inevitable that the two would come to blows. Pack leader fighting is a fun and popular pastime that really boosts morale among the cultists. So, on their way to some battle aboard a World Eater's ship, the two would hold a fight club for everyone to watch. But Kadra was too aggressive for Rel to get a read on her, and Rel was too scrappy for Kadra to pin him down. Kadra tries to shiv Rel in the chest until he grabs her by the arm and spins her head first into a metal bulkhead. Rel attempted to strangle Kadra, only to have her nearly bite off his thumb. So the first fight between them is a draw. But there's time enough for a second fight, and that's also a draw. In the aftermath, nobody's happy, least of all Rel and Kadra. Unwilling to move on until this thing is settled, they decide to settle things the other old-fashioned way. Whoever claims the most skulls in the upcoming raid will be the winner. A good plan that just ran smack into the brick wall of reality. Because that raid would be the Battle of Kondrop B6. Now, what made that battle so bad? Well, when you're a devotee of the melee god, and you're going up against an Imperial Guard gun line, you're going to be at a bit of a disadvantage. Not an hour into the battle, well over half the heretic foot soldiers had been killed, both jackals and world eaters. They'd made a strong initial push, but all that meant was that the surviving members of the first wave were caught in the middle. And who would you think wanted to be in that first wave, eager to claim more kills for their little competition? This left our principal leads too far ahead to pull back, not that they would ever consider retreating before the eyes of the Lord of Skulls, but also in a less than ideal spot to continue their charge. Very World War I no man's land. The only difference being that Kondrop B6 was a completely arid desert. Harsh shrubs instead of barbed wire, and jagged rocks instead of shell craters. Now, it's said that Khorne favors the brave, the bloody, the burly, the blah 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 blah, but there's one more group that often gets a lot of praise from the blood god. Team killers. Those with a penchant for friendly fire. They really help trim the fat from the warband. and Rel was about to join that prestigious group. To his credit, he wasn't going to just do this for the shits and the giggles. These aren't Harlequins we're talking about. Rel had been peeking at the Imperial Guard units, watching their rigid discipline. Not one step forward or one step backward without their commanders saying so. The heretics just needed to close the distance before that order could be given. There were just two problems. First, the morale of the mighty jackals was running on fumes after losing so many people. They weren't up to the final push. However, despite his lack of voice, Rel could be quite convincing when he wanted to be. After all, when the 7-foot berserker starts chopping up his own men, behaving like he's having a psychotic break, there's really no arguing with that. Thus, the charge resumes, and with it, the cultists resume getting gunned down en masse. This was the second problem. Not the senseless death. Khorne cares not from where the blood flows. Except that this would leave them with only about 2 or maybe 3 people to hack through the whole Imperial Guard platoon. Therefore, only the best need survive. So, Rel grabs Kadra by the arm to keep her from leading from the front and catching a lasbolt to the noggin. She initially scowls at this perceived cowardice, but comes around quickly when they are the only 2 left to make it to the trench line, and have all the murder to themselves. Rel climbs up an armored sentinel, rips open the hatch, and sticks his chainsword down the pilot's throat. A Valkyrie lands to offload reinforcements, but instead onloads one Kadra, who kills everyone on board and depins 3 frag grenades on her way out. The pair are forcing their way into a Chimera troop transport as the rest of the Khorne army gets stuck in, and it's a great time. So great that neither Kadra nor Rel remember that they began this whole thing with an idea for a competition. What began as a spur-of-the-moment alliance would form a foundation to build an almost familial friendship. Granted, it was a friendship built on bones, blood, and gore, but they had more in common than just that. Lots to talk. Well, not lots to talk about. Rel never talked to anyone about anything, but similar stories to share. Rel was actually the first person Kadra told about her history serving the Black Templars. And vice versa, Kadra would be the first person to hear about Rel's upbringing on TMC-4. I mean, she heard it from the voice of a slave reading from a prepared statement written by Rel, and if he got just one word wrong, Rel would break his arm. But the gesture was still valid. A supportive relationship, unhealthy for everyone around them, that was not without its humor. At the time the 2 of them met, Rel and Kadra had individually served Khorne for years and killed more people than influenza. They'd gotten pretty comfortable being angry at everyone and everything. So, when they discovered another person they could get along with, it was like 2 autists falling in love. Holy shit, someone I not only feel comfortable around, but totally gets where I'm coming from? This is unheard of, a revelation! I've just invented a whole new part of the human experience! I'm having emotions I've never felt before, and it's freaking me out! I should make a note here because I know some people are going to draw this conclusion. At no point is it established that they ever had any sort of romantic interest in each other. As it was portrayed, it was strictly a brother-sister relationship. And even beyond that, they're not Slanesh followers. They belong to Khorne, first, last, and always. Which did have its drawbacks. For all the muscle-bound fun of the Blood God, anticipating their enemies and preparing for them, not one of their strong suits. Because really, what's there to prepare? You see an enemy, you apply chainsword. Whether it's the Imperium, the Orcs, or in their dramatic reappearance in this story, the Drukhari. After some battle which was only distinct when Kadra injured her foot stamping on a tech priest's face, the Khornate warband picked up a shadow. The Drukhari had earmarked that Imperial world as their latest target, only to show up and find that the World Eaters and Cultists hadn't left any survivors, as they do. But come hell or high water, the Drukhari were gonna have their slaves. So they began following the Khorne warband from the shadows. Never ones to accept a fair fight, the Drukhari thought the odds were a little too even between the two armies if they were to fight it out. Instead, they played the long game. Unaware, the warband moved from this planet to that planet. Some were defended, others weren't, some surrendered, some tried to hide, some tried to make offerings. The results were always the same. We want your blood. All of it. You can fight in glorious battle, or you can kneel and we won't kill you, but we will take you along as a slave. Either way, skull, throne, you know the drill. Until this murderous OODA loop was interrupted by a planet where the Imperium was ready for them. Not just ready, but ready with loyalist space marines. Red Hunters, if you want to know, led by an Inquisitor of the Ordo Hereticus. Oh, they were prepared to kill some Chaos Worshippers. However, once you commit to a fight, you go through with it. Khorne favors the responsible. And in the now decades Rel and Kadra had been fighting for the Big K, they'd taken down Astartes before. They'd gotten it down to a two-man science. Plus, they had Astartes on their own side just the same. A nice, fair fight all around, if they could just get in close. Sadly, in the loyalists' selfish and dishonorable desire to live through this battle, they wouldn't be engaging with them in melee right away. Rather than get to fight in the planet's hive city, with all those nice tight spaces, the loyalists had forced the World Eaters and Jackals to make planetfall in the vast red-brown plains outside the city. Now it was a charge across open country before they could get to work. It goes poorly, but not so poorly, certainly not as bad as their run against the Guard earlier. Rel, Kadra, and a good number of Jackals and World Eaters make it to within spitting distance of the Imperium's lines. All they needed was one good charge. They bunkered up, letting more and heavier units move up from behind for one final push. And then the Drukhari showed up. The Dark Eldar landed behind the heretics, wiping out their backline, their reinforcements. They got everything. Rel watches their backup get demolished, Kadra can hear it, and then the Drukhari start moving in on them at Mach speed. Rock hard place. But that doesn't mean they have to go down easy. With the last Jackals following them and the World Eaters doing the same, Rel grabbed Kadra as they made a last suicide charge for the Red Hunters. Now, lacking Rel's long legs, Kadra runs just a little bit slower than the big guy. Not a problem in all the years they'd spent together, just meant that Kadra arrived to a fight half a second after Rel. However, with the blistering speed of the Drukhari bearing down on them, half a second made a big difference. Kadra is among the first to be swept up by the wave of Dark Eldar coming up behind them. An incubi seizes her by the chin and back of the head, and breaks Kadra's neck before she has a chance to fight back, then shoves her body to one side and keeps running. But Rel would never realize this. As he's at the front of the Chaos and Xeno onslaught approaching the Space Marines, Rel's hit by a bolter shell. At first, he thinks it just nicked him. Not much pain, though it did spin him around and bring him down to one knee. Then he looks down at the wound and realizes, nope, it hit him. Hit him square in the left pec, blowing out half his chest and his left arm off at the shoulder. No time for anger, fear, or anything. Just enough to realize, yep, that's my arm on the ground, before Rel falls dead. The rest of the heretics are wiped out with no survivors. The wave passes over them, pushing the fight between Xenos and Astartes further on, and leaving the bodies behind. And that was the end of Rel and Kadra. As mortals. You see, Khorne disdained sapient beings more than his siblings, but not for anything inherently wrong with them. It's just that so often they miss the forest for the trees. They're always about what comes after the battle. The peace, the glory, the whatever they want, completely missing the fact that the battle itself is its own reward. There is nothing like a true fiery battle between two warriors, and they miss that. It's enough to drive a warmongering deity to despair. But not these two. They'd gone from one fight to the next without pause. They'd been angry enough to dedicate the majority of their lives to wanton slaughter, always remembering to credit their kills to capital K Khorne. Sure, they were disabled, but Khorne's never been one to discriminate or hold a prejudice among his followers, so long as they can make good numbers, to which these two had put up some pretty good f***ing numbers. And you know what? The Lord of Skulls was thinking he could go for an encore. So Khorne strolled down to the constant river of souls that flows into the warp, and as soon as Rel and Kadra's souls flowed in, Khorne plunged in and pulled them out, one in each hand before his greedy siblings got the chance. Then he said, "Okay, I like what you guys have been doing out there. I have one more trial. I'm gonna lock the two of you in separate cells, and if you can kill one bloodletter every hour of every day for the next 10 years without tiring, you pass. Otherwise, I'm making you into Chaos Spawn." The pair agreed, and 10 years and 87,660 slain bloodletters later, Khorne let them out, with a big blood god smirk on his face. "You kids did great. I'm gonna send you back to do more. But you know, while I've got you here, in my domain, might as well give you a few aftermarket extras of my own variety." And that was exactly what Khorne did before he let their souls return to their physical forms. You might wonder how their bodies didn't decay in all that time. Remember, it was 10 years in the warp. In reality, it had been about 7 seconds, maybe less. Point is, they were alive again. But in order to accommodate their new gifts, Rel and Kadra's bodies had to undergo a few renovations. And like all renovations, it was messy. Unnoticed by the battle, which continued to push further away from them, life started to return to these two corpses. Eyes shifting, mouths twitching, hands clutching at the dirt. Then it got violent. Spasms, seizures, skin tearing and mending as muscle and bone grew with unholy vigor. Rel began to cough like he was hacking up a lung. Sensation had returned and there was something caught in his mouth. Finally, he was able to cough it up on the ground beside his head. Then another. 2 more after that. Things like little pebbles colored white-yellow. It was his teeth. Rel's teeth were falling out of his gums. He tried to roll over to make the process simpler, but couldn't. The tendons from his ruptured chest were reaching out to reconnect with the muscles from his severed arm. Reaching out until they connected, and the arm returned with such force that Rel was flipped over with the impact. Meanwhile, Kadra was going through the same in her own way. She worked herself onto her hands and knees as her head twisted back into place. Each individual bone fixed itself with a crack that she could feel in the bottom of her spine until the neck was fixed. But what the gods fix, they must improve. And Kadra had to grit her teeth as 8 thick bone spikes broke through the skin in a circle around her neck. Not bloodlessly either. It was dripping off her neck. It was pouring off her face. Though it wasn't coming out of her nose or mouth, the blood was coming from her eyes. The whole process lasted several harrowing seconds for both of them. But once it was over, well, in the immortal words of Bachman Turner Overdrive, baby, you ain't seen nothing yet. Kadra was the first to stand up. Khorne had fixed the issue with her height, moving her up to the level of an Astartes. And while the Jackal training regimen had given her a proper pack of muscle, now she was built like a proper blood god-fearing murder machine. She stepped over, held down her hand, and without a word between the two of them, Rel grabbed her hand and she pulled him to his feet. Rel had also gotten a dozen blood god protein shakes to boost him up. However, he still appeared more on the lean side because, you see, it turned out abnormally tall still wasn't tall enough for the Lord of Skulls. And now the guy was head and shoulders over an ogrin. Also, the arm he got shot off. You remember what I said, the gods improve what they fix? Yeah, now it looked like Rel was part bloodthirster. About the only thing Khorne had left unchanged were their disabilities, since they informed that oh-so-righteous anger. But that wouldn't stop him from giving them some compensation. You recall the sense of smell Kadra honed? Well, a polar bear can scent its prey from miles away, and thanks to the big K, Kadra could put that to shame. And Rel didn't need his teeth for speaking, even more than most, so Khorne gave him some replacements. Some very inhuman replacements. Now all that was left was to test out their new abilities and, more importantly, get revenge against the two armies that had just killed them. Since they were closer, the pair decided to start with the Space Marines. At first, they employed the old strategy of working together to take out one Astartes. Then, half a second later, that one Astartes was in 3 separate pieces. So they upped the ante, 1 Marine for each of them. Wasn't enough. Full squad of veterans. Nothing. A jump pack squad for one, a Predator Destructor for the other. The detachment even had a Dreadnought in their ranks until Rel put his fist through the thing's vision slit. But the real trophy was the Inquisitor leading the army. Of course, both of them loathed the Imperium, but it was Kadra who had a real special place for them in the angry red tumor she had instead of a heart. For the Inquisition, for the Ecclesiarchy, really for anyone who had anything nice to say about the Big E. So it was mutually and politely decided between the two of them, genuinely, that Kadra would take the honor. And as Rel went off to have a very spirited discussion with a Space Marine Justiciar, Kadra advanced on the Inquisitor and his retinue. A retinue that included a heavy weapons servitor, until Kadra beat it to death with its own plasma cannon, 3 inquisitorial henchmen who Kadra folded into origami, and 1 Inquisition scribe whom Kadra let live out of respect for her own past as a scribe. Do you believe that? No? Good, because she smashed their skull between her hands. That just left the Inquisitor, and I'll give the Inquisition this, they don't train cowards or incompetents. With Force Stave in one hand and Plasma Pistol in the other, he would fight to the bitter end. Granted, that end would be about half a minute later, and most of it was just Kadra seeing, or maybe experiencing would be the better word, what the Inquisition's best had to offer. Wasn't much, but he was no coward, and that was well worth hanging his severed head from the chain around her waist. The pair rejoined with Rel toting a spanking new greatsword, courtesy of that Justiciar he disemboweled with his bare hands, very literally this time. Then the pair moved on to the Drukhari. They informed some incubi that they were no longer the best melee unit on the battlefield, got the chance to meet with some grotesques, and even numbed to pain you can't fight when someone's ripped out your spine, which opened the path to a raider for them to board, hijack, and then crash into another raider trying to flee the battle. The Drukhari leadership had seen which way the battle was going and decided to get out while the getting was good. Then their transport got wrecked, though the warlord, a Dark Eldar succubus with that trademark succubus agility, had been able to leap free and remain unharmed. Now, it was only fair, polite, and poetic for Rel to be the one to kill her, so Kadra left him to it, sniffing after a low-level Archon with an open wound. Cornering her in the wreckage, Rel planted the great sword blade down in the ground, then just stood there, like a pillar while the succubus wailed on him with kicks and flips and spins and slides and all manner of acrobatics. She put a lengthy scar across his abdomen. Rel still didn't move. Looked to everyone like he'd gone brain dead or been frozen in time. That was until the succubus leapt into the air for a massive kick which got interrupted when Rel caught her by the ankle with his bloodthirster arm. She wouldn't have time to react as Rel began swinging her around his head like a mace. And then, well...
Know that you can flip things in a pan by just flipping the...
Did you guys know you could stir your coffee with a spoon by just...
Did you guys know you can strum your guitar by only...
Did you guys know you can brush your teeth like...
And did you know you could slice someone in half by keeping your sword in place and swinging the person into it? Because that's what Rel did. One moment he was holding a full Drukhari in his hand, the next moment he was only holding a pair of legs. Never say the instruments of Khorne can't be creative. When all was said and done, Rel and Kadra were the only living things in a 3-mile radius. The Blood God had been well and truly validated in his choice to uplift these two, with only one teeny tiny problem. With their newly granted power as two demon hosts, well, not hosts, they were actual fucking demons at this point. Demon prince and princess, if you will, or maybe more accurately, demon sire and bitch. Whatever, I'm off topic. The point is, they could enter the warp to kneel before their god for the first time, and he had to give them a talking to. He said, "Guys, you did a great job out there. That was a spectacular showing. I loved every minute. But now that you're part of my in crowd, you can't just be using any old mortal garbage." Specifically, he was referring to their weapons. The Executioner Relic Blade Rel had taken to, and the Husk Blade Kadra had lifted off that Archon she killed. Good weapons, good choices, Khorne loves blades, but they lacked that Blood God punch and aesthetic. To remedy this, Khorne summoned 2 of his lesser demons, reabsorbed them, then channeled their energy into the weapons. The Husk Blade turned into a stiletto which could expand its handle and blade at Kadra's will to turn into a damn massive warglaive, or anything in between. For Rel, the Relic Blade turned into a claymore so large it would only ever be appropriate for him, complete with a vicious serrated blade that was not quite a chain weapon, but the same spirit. Now they were ready, and Khorne gave his blessing. Go in war to love and serve me, which they did, are doing, and definitely will continue to do. Today, when they're not in anger meditation, which is a real thing, gotta keep up that rage somehow, or on duty expanding a kill count so massive it would make every serial killer ever known wet their pants with envy, Rel and Kadra have hobbies to stay busy. Mainly taking a page from Trazen's book and collecting things that interest them. Appropriately, Rel keeps a collection of teeth from all his favorite kills. As you might expect, it's a lot of fangs and tusks from Tyranids and orcs respectively. Meanwhile, Kadra is much more selective, trying to assemble a set of skulls from each of the Assassinorum temples. Which wouldn't be so hard, she's 3 for 4 plus 1 from the Vannis, except she has yet to fight a Caluxus assassin. Because believe it or not, an anti-psychic assassin is pretty useless against a faction that abhors psychics. Beyond that, the two enjoy working with others that embrace the gory calling of the Blood God. Other Khorne demons and princes, world eaters, and especially cultists. After all, gotta foster the next generation. Kadra has become quite the motivational speaker for Khorne, drawing on her ancient history with the Black Templars. I mean, it's a lot of yelling, pounding her fist, and threatening to do unspeakable things to anyone who dies with a clean sword. Meanwhile, Rel still can't speak and doesn't care, but he has begun writing. Keeping a diary of their adventures. Documentation for others should they wish to follow the Eightfold Path. Now, granted, it's written in the demon language, and if any mortal was to try and read it, they'd be overcome by a psychotic rage. But that's guidance in its own way. And to this day, the two remain inseparable. Demons all on their own, unstoppable killing machines in their own rights, but they will never willingly part from each other. Because each knows that the other is the only person to understand what it is to come from nothing. be exploited as a nothing, and find their way to a god who would reward their everlasting fury. Because that is Rel Kadra, ladies and gentlemen. We were taught to bleed away our lives and be grateful for the opportunity, to suffer under his constant and petulant gaze. Then we were left to the tender mercies of the void while the promised might of the Imperium was nowhere to be found. Though, I am inclined to thank them, for it was here we found purpose and a God worth serving. Our Lord may have only embraced us once we proved ourselves worthy, but now our bond to him is beyond question. He has proven himself to be more than that impotent corpse has ever been. Kadra. Now it's time for the fourth act post-credit scene most people have already left and don't care twist. It's that all of this story is completely made up. Well, I mean, it's 40k, it's all made up and fiction, but Rel and Kadra aren't canon. They are homegrown creations of my own grey matter. Now, why would I do such a silly thing? Because I wanted to explore an often overlooked part of Chaos and Khorne in particular. For better or worse, they don't discriminate and accept all comers so long as the gods can be provided for in return. Sure, berserkers and warlords are obvious choices, but anyone can commit mass murder. And that can be very appealing to the most low and abused humans who get crushed by the Imperium. I don't know, I fully expect this video to perform terribly, and I'm okay with that. And I will do this again. I've got an idea and want to dive into the horrifying minds of some Slaanesh demons next.